Before we start officially, and maybe Joost and Lara, you have questions already you would like to ask and that we can proceed with. I here have the overview of our most frequently asked regulations as per the regulator. So these are a selection of what we normally get in terms of questions from ship owners, suppliers, and others. And I was just checking out the FuelEU section, in particular the biofuel section. I think we need to have a closer look at the amount of biodiesel requirements to be compliant. Well, this is, of course, I'd say a key question. I've heard it more often. We can actually have a look at it later on, see if we can figure that out, because the tool we made should be easily convertible to have that in mind. How to calculate greenhouse gas? Yeah, well, everything we do here, except for the best way to achieve FuelEU compliance, that's in the eye of the beholder. But these we can discuss as well. So that I'll definitely have a look at. Is some skip FuelEU compliant? Well, are they? Let's see. I'm interested. Oh, being a places substantial emphasis on. Well, is it compliant? You pay your penalty, so you're compliant. So probably next year they have to. But this is way too long. Just a yes or no. Yes. I'll ask him to say yes next time. But let's see. It has a history of adopting innovative blah blah blah. Damn. Okay. Given some, so it's reasonable to deduce that they are compliant. Nice one, regulator. Okay. I see that Joost, you are interested in learning how solar panels would impact the EEXI number. Ooh. Let's have a look. I'm going to first take the decarbonizer here. We'll do that as an appetizer. I'm also interested, especially to see how the tool itself would work. I know that we are lagging in updating EEXI. It is included here, of course, but we'll see. Is there any ship type, Joost, in particular that you would like to have a look at? Is it an inland vessel or, well, I wouldn't do a tanker personally because its deck area is probably too much needed. Bulk carrier. Interesting. Okay. So let's see. We're going to go for probably a general bulk carrier. Yep. So ship properties here. Sabrina Fair. So hopefully this is something to the effects of what you were looking for. I see what you're going with these deck handles or deck hatches. Handles, I believe, 1,100 kilowatt peak on accommodation. Oh, I thought you just wanted to cover the whole thing. No, okay, let's do that. Sailing 235 days a week, going to regulations. Well, but first decarbonize. So you have solar PV. 100 kilowatt peak. Yes. So in this instance, we have to take into account, of course, where exactly it's sailing and everything. But we're going to do ship surface, what peak. So we now have 222 kilowatt peak. So we probably need about 500 cubic meters, no, square meters, a little bit more. I see now how to improve this one. Okay, 105 kilowatt peak. Well, you don't see a lot of improvements when sailing, but let's see what happens if it's idle moored. Already better, but this is of course assuming we have 800 kilowatt hours of average power demand. So Joost, maybe you can have a look there as well and see if you can adjust the ship properties with main engine and auxiliary engines here. And if we have a look at the idle moored power profile, maybe if the engines were only 20% running, sailing per working peak idle moored, yeah, 400 kilowatts. That's, I wouldn't say much, but certainly not a lot. Here, then you can already see that maybe the air fryer could be powered for the entire crew. At least 21st of March. So in June, it's going to be better. There we go. Well, longer mostly. Okay. Cool. Here you can play around with your system. Then let's see how it would impact EEXI. We get a 0.02 improvement. And we still need a lot to go. So this would not generally cut it, Joost. That's quite high, I think. The power demand, you mean? Yeah. Okay. Laura, can I go a bit slower? I'll try. I'll definitely try, but I'm not sure if I can because when I get excited with sustainalizing ships, then it's very hard for me to slow down. But indeed, let's slow it down a bit. Joost, you can, if you have more information on the ship specifically, let me know in the top chat. But if we look at a solar PV deck, or at least about 100 kilowatt peak system type for your solar panels, then we need about 600 square meters of area with 175 watt peaks per square meter. And that would lead to a system like this, at least for March. But it would only marginally improve the EEXI if we look at the totals here. But of course, I don't have your ship details. What we need to do is have a look at the CO2 emissions per year. The operational mode sailing here, that's taken as a general. The CO2 emissions per year are then deduced. And of course, in our EEXI tools, the further down we go, the better we can estimate the EEXI. So if we get some more information on that, it could be more precisely determined. However, from what I can see here, the impact on EEXI itself would be marginal. Maybe we have more luck with, for example, FuelEU. The penalty would be 1621. Oh, damn. Ooh, we're live, so I have to be careful with my words. We should be able to, let's see, have a look and see what it is. Wow, also there, it's a marginal improvement, I have to say. We're going to showcase these next to each other in the future to make sure that it's easier to spot the differences. All right. I'm not sure if that answers your question, Joost. And if it is the answer, if it is an answer, hopefully it's. I'm not sure if it's the one you were looking for because I'd say it's marginally interesting for this ship type. But well, let me know if there's some error in my thinking I did there. All right, going back to the topic of the day. Of today, it's Friday, Q&A Friday with Doedee. We're gonna have a look at FuelEU in particularly full electric sailing. It's basically my favorite. We had a request from one of our members to investigate the impact of a fully electric tanker on FuelEU pooling, and that you can see here. Here we have some case studies that we make for not just our members, by the way. We also do it for fun because I love to make them. And here we see the FuelEU pooling case with a full electric chemical tanker. I briefly discussed some questions regarding FuelEU. Many people have many questions regarding FuelEU, but over the last, I'd say, half a year, the most amount of questions were with regards to, of course, lowest compliance, how does pooling work, and now also fully electric sailing. So this is for later, but if you go to the website, you can find the case study here as well. Mind you, we're still updating it. We're now receiving feedback, not just from the member, but also from others. And what you can see is something that looks very similar to other kinds of pictures I have seen about how many ships can compensate with a certain amount of over-compliance in a single FuelEU pool. If we have a look at a small-sized 5 to 8,000 metric tons deadweight ship, chemical tanker, that consumes about 2,555 on average metric tons of MDMO, we refit it or change it into a fully electric ship, we can have one pool up until 2030 with 69 different non-compliant ships on MDMO. And let me show you how we got to that result. Here you can see the FuelEU Maritime pool tool. I'm afraid I can't make it any simpler. We have tried. You can do less ships. That does make it simpler, but unfortunately, this is pretty complicated stuff. But what do we have here? We can blend here. So we can go back to our regular main fuel, 255. We have 10 ships in our pool. And what we can do is we can actually blend or change one fuel to another fuel to see what the impact of fuel costs, EU ETS, and of course, FuelEU penalties are combined. We're first going to do a base case, so you can save your case here. And I've done an example here. So if you have a look, this is the case that I did more specifically. But first we'll go through it with you. So we have a base case here. So this would be 10 ships running on MDO only, and then you'd have a FuelEU costs of 16 million per year already starting this year. Okay, that's a lot. I'm pretty sure that's accurate, but I'm always, oh, sorry, fuel cost. I was scared a bit there. Feel free to correct me, by the way. 100,000, luckily. Otherwise, yeah, it would have definitely been maybe too much for most ship owners to compensate. But if we now see what the impact of fully electric ships would be, then you see with the current pricing, of course, we're going to have full electric 2025. Make sure that we can see it properly. We're going to pay more, but we can, of course, distribute the surplus. There we go. So we're still with this pricing, and I believe I took 10 cents per kilowatt hour, which is not a lot for fully electric charging. What this means is you basically have to have your own power supply, so some sort of power purchase agreement. And I took 650 euros per metric ton as fuel. But we can change these around, of course, to see how it would impact the cost. And I've taken it deliberately at somewhat of the, so that the fuel costs are roughly the same in these cases. But you can see we have a lot of over-compliance here. And if we can sell that remaining surplus, or we can include more ships into the pool itself. Or if we go to, for example, 2030, then we can see what the impact would be. And I already had a look, 2035. It's basically the tipping point, because afterwards you don't have enough over-compliance of your full electric ship to compensate for all the different vessels in your pool, at least your pool of 10. So we would have to have another ship with about 40% fully electrically powered in order to compensate for the rest of the ships in the entire pool. That's basically it. So we can use this tool, and we can also adjust the settings, the amount of ships, etc., to further refine the pooling strategies. And this I've done for the fully electric case. Here you can see. And what were the results? Well, I have to say, fully electric ships are, of course, they provide the most amount of over-compliance overall, because at the moment, the FuelEU regulation takes into account the emissions to be zero. So that's basically the lowest you can get. So it is the most amount of over-compliance you can provide. And I'm going to cross-reference this with other sources to make sure that it is in the same orders of magnitude. And after 2035, like I said, well, you still have 6 ships, but well, after 2040, the benefits of pooling become less and less. So especially in the first 5 years, and then 2030 up until 2035, you're going to have an extreme amount of benefit using these types of technologies. And then afterwards, it's going to be a lot less. Okay. So we already saw that here we had a lot of questions on biodiesel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the regular tool, I'm going to reload it, and we're going to take a case where we have biofuels. So I'm going to do maybe a little less ships, maybe more. Joost, do we want more or less ships than 10? Let's see, because if we do have less ships, then it's going to be easier to see how everything changes. Okay, I'm going to do 5 ships, save the base case. So we still have the same tankers, but I'm not going to blend it with, well, blending with fully electric, that's of course not the case. I'm not going to charge it with electricity, but I'm going to do a biodiesel. And we're going to change the fuel parameters over here. So we can change the specific type of biodiesel, or maybe even blend that we have. So 5 is fine. Good to hear. Okay, so this is 100% blend. So first we're going to do the base case 2025. Save it. And then I'm going to do blend in 2035. And I might want to do a blend in 2045 to see if we can get the most cost-effective solutions. And then maybe we're going to non-blend it to see what the difference would be with the base case. So first of all, in 2025, we probably don't need a lot of biofuels to get a compliant pool. There we go, 15% blend. That's what we roughly need in order to get a compliant pool. But then if we save it, base case, blend 2025, we see that we are paying more actually in terms of blending costs as opposed to penalties. So what we have to do here is biodiesel 1300. We have to check if this is the correct price for our biodiesel, because maybe if we change that to 1100, I'm going to put the prices there as well. Yeah. Then you see in this case, it would actually be better to, no, a little bit less to blend it. Let's see, biodiesel. Yeah. That's why I like sliders now. I'm going to do it like this. So if the fuel prices become higher, then of course it's better to blend or not. So let's see what the amount of blending would be in order to compensate in the future. And I'm going to put the biodiesel again at 30, 1000. Yeah. 24 to 35. I'm going to take it. There we go. Interesting. So this is our base case 2035. I'm going to save one. And now we're going to blend and see when we get a balance. So we need one ship, well, not blended, 100% biodiesel. Oh, of course, we need biodiesel here as well. There we go. So here you see we can either do one ship to 1.5 ship to compensate for the rest. I still think that's a better strategy overall to have one ship or two ships to compensate for the others, especially all the way up to 2035, because then you can invest in one ship heavily. Also, the crew can get invested, and then the other ships, they can benefit from the success. And especially if they are approaching their end of life by 2035, you don't have to do much for them in order to still achieve compliance with regards to FuelEU. So here we see the overall costs. Let's save it, blending 2035. We see that the overall costs here are slightly less, there we go, than our base case. So this would be a preferential way of, or this could be a way for you to compensate FuelEU penalties and get, of course, the lowest fuel cost. You will pay more in absolute fuel cost, but overall it will be less. And of course, make sure to check your biofuel prices in order to ensure that the total sum of the fuel cost, EU ETS and FuelEU, is still the lowest. Does this also work with vessels sailing outside of EU? The tool, I'm assuming, actually it does. However, this particular instant is made, well, let me reload it, with only inside FuelEU. But we have tools that allow for inside EU, from and to EU, and of course outside EU. So what we'll do, excellent question and great feedback. For the premium version, we'll include those amounts here, so that for each different ship, you can add the fuel type and then what it's consuming annually in order to get a better estimate of the totals. And then we should also include different fuel types. Once we do that, however, look, I can show you. We'll not only have internal, external EU costs, but we're also going to get multiple fuel types, multiple costs, etc. We can do anything you want, but then it will be very complicated. That's also the reason why we make less fuels here. Provide some more feedback maybe through the help desk, and we can discuss the exact needs. But yeah, including outside sailing, outside EU sailing would be nice. You mean the pooling with sailing outside of EU? Well, pooling only accounts for everything that's under the jurisdiction of EU. So everything outside EU, you don't really need to pool tool because you don't have to pay for a FuelEU. So then I might not understand the question completely, but yeah, feel free to comment further. And that's our final case that we have. That's actually the case that we made today. So let's go back to the results. You can check it out here, and also below you can comment in case you see some errors or ways in our thinking, or might have some improvements, just like you, Joost. Feel free to do all of that whenever you are ready. So are there any more questions from people that we can work on? There we go. Sailing with biofuels outside of EU. This would not be helpful for the pooling. No, absolutely not. So any type of biofuels, well, you don't really have any benefits if you do it outside of the EU, because then all the well, it's not, of course, taken into account. So if you sell outside of the EU, the fuel consumption here is not taken into account. So it won't be added or subtracted actually from your FuelEU penalties, of course. So what I've heard is that you see some shipping companies who use their blends or a higher percentage of blends in between journeys in the EU or from and to the EU. And then outside of the EU, or when it's in international waters outside of the EU, they're just simply sailing on regular conventional fuel. Yeah. Well, I'm not guessing all questions have been answered, but considering the limited amount of people currently in the live stream, maybe these questions do answer all of these are well, these solutions answer all of your questions at the moment. Yeah, we should be including microphones from people to get some more conversations going. Let's see, Joost. Okay, so if you go for one vessel out of the fleet which sails worldwide, it should be the vessel sailing most time in EU. Absolutely. Yeah. Great. Great to hear. And check out the other tools we have for FuelEU as well. We also have the case maker, but that does not include pooling, but that does give you a better overview of different fuels on one ship, at least. Okay. Well, this feels a bit lonely, but I guess it's also time for us to have lunch. That we do. Actually have multiple, but we also have our verifier, Normec Verifavia, who can help with these calculations and verify them at the same time. So, yeah, I think that concludes our first Q&A session on Friday. STX. Ah, yes. Well, they're not the only ones, Pratik. We also have Carbon Leap, but those they are also knowledgeable in marketing, so selling over compliance. So if you have that at the ready, or if you have, if you are in need of buying compliance, you can also contact them, and STX can indeed provide more support with this particular issue. Well, I guess that's a wrap up. In 2 weeks, we'll be discussing more case studies, and we'll see how we can incorporate microphones to get people more talkative and get the discussion going. In the meantime, I want to thank you for your time, and as always, have a great day.